Hello and welcome to the show. Now, when it comes to Forza Horizon games, I thoroughly enjoy the rallying aspect. Often, to be fair, a lot of the more intricate driving roads can be found on the dirt, so naturally I spend a fair bit of time racing out here. I like building rally cars, etc. However, there is always one interesting element, because if I'm building a car specifically to go off-road, you're going to have rally tyres, you're going to have rally suspension, etc. on your vehicle. But what if you are building a car for overall, a vehicle to run in multiple events? Because there is PI differences between the tyres. Tyres being the most important part. Race suspension you could set up to be pretty similar. I think you actually probably going to set it up the same as rally suspension if you want to go for that. But tyres, well, depending on the car that you're using, it's around 15-ish PI. There might be some bigger gaps, there might be some smaller gaps between the two of them, and they are going to play, you know, funnily enough, a very big important part. At the end of the day, they are the bit of the car touching the ground, and they're the bit that needs to, well, have some grip. So I was to set up a bit of an experiment using different cars in different configurations to see how the two tyres compare. Starting off with a Porsche 911. Now, this car was left completely stock. Okay, so the car was unmodified outside of the tyres. An all-wheel drive sports car, pretty quick vehicle, the 911 Turbo. First running in, well, with dirt with the rally tyres. Now, we're using the Ambleside circuit here, as this is, I think, the only pure dirt. Well, it was at the time of filming this, before I had the course creator. This is the only pure dirt circuit, and it's quite a good test for the cars. You've got some interesting braking zones, you've got some nasty corners to deal with, a little bit of high-speed stuff as well to test the vehicles. We move on to the car fitted with race tyres. Of course, the vehicle completely stock is higher PI with the race tyres, and this is getting up towards mid to highish S1 class. This Porsche, it's a fairly quick vehicle, and you can immediately notice the difference. You can immediately tell the difference between the two tyres. You know, funnily enough, the race tyre, though essentially semi-slick tyre on the car, does not give you very much grip. I say it doesn't give you very much grip on the dirt. You're still able to get around here. You're still able to drive around the circuit. It's not like it's completely and utterly useless, but you'll notice the car understeers more going into the slower corners. It slides more on the exit, and even with all-wheel drive, it does struggle a little bit more to put the power down. Of course, you go with two-wheel drive cars, whether the front or rear-wheel drive, the differences are probably going to be bigger. Truth is, if you're building a car that you might be taking rallying, well, chances are you should probably be using an all-wheel drive vehicle. So, with the car run in both its configurations off-road, it was then time to take it, well, onto the tarmac to see how it might fare around here. Because, well, if you're going to be building a car overall, chances are you're going to be tackling some pure tarmac races. And there are a fair few of these. Again, this is another pretty technical circuit. The car, in every other aspect, is going to be completely identical. Fitted with rally tyres, it doesn't become a horrendous mess to drive. Well, at all, really. It's still a nice handling car. Of course, potentially you've got more PI to work with in that given class. If you're saving 10 or 15 PI on tyres, well, you might be able to get more power into the car. That's potentially a theory, which we tackle a little bit later. But yeah, it gets around this circuit with little in the way of trouble. Put it on the race tyres. Again, there's a pretty immediate difference between the two cars. Much like it is very noticeable from a driving standpoint which car is on rally tyres when you're on the dirt, it's immediately noticeable which car is on race tyres when it comes to the tarmac. Race tyres in Horizon 4 are quite an important thing. In all honesty, they are. Yeah, I say needed. Certainly, tyres are very, very important, and they don't cost as much PI as we've seen in previous Forza games, and they do, as you can expect, make a very, very big difference. The 911 is better to drive. There is more grip everywhere. While traction isn't ever going to be an issue out here, there is just more grip going through the corners. We can brake later. We can carry that little bit more speed through just about everywhere. So this is kind of the results that you would expect to see. This is the stuff that you would expect to see. So the car fitted with off-road tyres during the off-road race, won by about 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds in fact, over a relatively short lap. Interestingly, when we go to the road race, over a slightly longer lap, there's only a second in it. Now this is fairly consistent with what we have seen in previous games, in Horizon 3. If I was picking one of those cars to run over a multiple discipline event, I would have the rally tyres, because 2.5 seconds in the off-road race is going to be, over the course of a race, a greater help than the perhaps second you get during the road race. Admittedly, you know, if you did 2 races, one would win each, but certainly there is a slight better difference for the off-roading. However, of course, there is a PI difference as well with the vehicles. As I said, running the car as with race tyres, you have a little bit less PI to play with. So for my next kind of part of this investigation, I was to take a Subaru Impreza, built to the top of S1 class, so pretty damn powerful machine this. One built using rally tyres, one built using the race tyres, and then taken down 2 different stages, or 2 different areas. So we've got what is probably one of the fastest rally stages. Now admittedly this one does not, the whole course isn't dirt, it does finish with a tarmac sprint, and that's kind of not really what I wanted for this particular test. So I was measuring it, I would just go frame by frame and sort of stop the time for the car as it crosses onto the tarmac. The blue Subaru in this is the one fitted with rally tyres, and as you can imagine, doesn't really have too many problems. Well, this is a full, these are both sort of full built to their respective specs. So the grey Subaru here, the race car, is built with race tyres, race suspension, whereas the blue Subaru built with rally tyres, rally suspension. Both had flat 6 engine swaps. The PI, as I said, top of S1 class, I think the blue Subaru was putting out in 900 horsepower. This one, the race-built one, was slightly less, 850. That's still a lot of power. That is still a lot of power. There are a couple of big noticeable differences between the pair of them. Dealing with water, our race Subaru here is not as good. The lower ride height does not help it get through the big puddles, and just everywhere in these corners. Everywhere through the corners, the grey Subaru is having a tough time. It understeers considerably more coming into these corners. The front end just won't turn in, it hasn't got the grip. It's a little bit more uncomfortable on the landing of the jumps, it will get away with it, but it isn't particularly fun on these landings. And here, when I had no real issues getting the rally spec Subaru turned in, the race car, that would have no luck. But what about when it came to the tarmac stage? We know the race tyres are going to give the car more grip, but will the increased power that we can get in the rally spec car do anything to help negate that difference? Again, as I say, these cars are identical in terms of PI and fairly similarly built in terms of engine, that they're using the same engine, just different levels of power. The circuit that we're going to, this up by Edinburgh, is a nasty one. This is a nasty one because it is pretty fast. It's fast but with very mean corners, like this jump down there. You do 140 mile an hour through that section. It's a brilliant corner. It is perhaps one of my favourite corners on the game, but it is a very, very nasty one. You can see, I mean, I'm pushing the race car as hard as I can. Again, they got 3 runs through the rally stage. They get 5 laps around this circuit to set as quicker a time as possible as it just slides its way out of the corner. There are pretty big, I say there are big visual differences in the way the cars drive. You can certainly tell, you know, by looking at this car, that it's got more body roll coming through the corners. And I was pondering whether some of these, they're not really jumps, but some of the kind of transitions where you have got big, like the corner I like sort of a bit of a jump. I wonder whether the rally suspension might suit the car a little bit better. Honestly, didn't really make too much difference. Both cars could take the corner at roughly a similar amount of speed as we come flying up towards the turn. It was a little bit faster, although I was a little wider on the exit, so you're going to have to panic and get on the brakes in all of that. Corner grip is going to be less in this, and again, it's noticeably less. I can't be as brave going through the corner. I could be perhaps a little more aggressive with jumping across the grass. There's a bit of a bump coming towards the first corner here, but I could take with the rally Subaru, or I dared to take it a couple of times, although didn't really find much speed. There may, depending on the circuit, I guess you may be able to find little advantages that you can exploit with a rally spec car. It's a fast and ferocious circuit. It's 200 miles an hour up towards turn 1. Like that jump across the grass, you couldn't really do with a race spec car that much. However, overall, didn't really matter. In the off-road race, there is a sizable difference here. That is a big gap. Okay, over a near 2 minute run, but that's, yeah, we're talking near 8 seconds, 7.5 seconds difference between the pair of them. When on the road race, it's only a second. It is better for the race car, and it was a nicer vehicle to drive. It was easier to drive around that circuit, even without me being able to really jump across the grass comfortably. It was still going to be significantly quicker. It was just faster through the corners. It was better on the brakes. But I was going to have to say, if you're building a car overall, you're going to want to go with a rally car, because a second difference around a road race compared to 7.5 seconds in a dirt race. The final bit I wanted to have a look at was what would be the difference if we were building a car with sport tyres around a tarmac stage. We know if we put the car on sport tyres against an off-road tyre car, it's going to go better off-road, but what if we were building it on sport tyres for a road section? Because sport tyres is less PI again than the rally tyres, and I was wondering whether the sport tyres might be more comparable to the rally ones in terms of grip around here, and with less PI you could then potentially get more power out of the vehicle. I'm not quite sure why you necessarily go for this particular route, but it was something that I wanted to have a look at to see what would happen. So, Rally Spec Subaru, that would go around the tarmac course first. Again, this is another fairly quick circuit. I say fairly quick circuit. There's some big acceleration zones, and an S1 class Impreza is going to be getting up to some serious speed. So, put it onto the sport tyres. We give it a more bump in power, about another 45-50 horsepower in this car. So it's an absolute rocket ship, but it does not turn. Well, I say it doesn't turn, I mean, it's better than stock tyres, but it does not get turned into these corners as well as the rally tyres. So if you're going to be running around the tarmac stages, yeah, your rally tyres are certainly better than sport. But you can see it understeering through here. I was a little bit late on the brakes, but even when I got things right, it just doesn't turn in as nicely. You've got to brake a lot earlier. Again, you're not going to be carrying the corner speed, so yeah, out of the pair of them, rally tyres are essentially your second best bet for when it comes to running on tarmac. As we can see by the lap times, on the sport tyres 49.1, the rally tyres 47.7. That's a pretty noticeable difference. Again, both of those cars were top of S1. I guess maybe if you were doing drag racing, if you're doing something very, very high speed, you could, or restricted PI, maybe you would get away with running sport tyres for that little bit more power. But yeah, rally tyres certainly not bad on tyres. They're your second best option. So to answer the initial question, if you're going to be building a car for an overall event, if you're going to be tackling multiple different races with different surfaces, you are absolutely going to want rally tyres. They are, well, as you expect, much better off-road. And their differences on tarmac are not that great. Yes, if you are building a car specifically for tarmac, a car that you know is only ever going to be used for tarmac, you're going to naturally go for a full race setup. The extra power you can gain by running rally tyres is probably not going to help you, again, outside of very specific events. It's not really going to help you, though, because the race tyres grip is that much better. But yeah, overall, you are absolutely going to be wanting rally tyres. And this gap is likely to get bigger, as I said, if you go with different vehicles. All of these were being run all-wheel drive. Your rear-wheel drive and front-wheel drive cars, traction is going to be a bigger issue. So the race tyres are going to waste more time spinning their wheels in that. And on tarmac, it's unlikely to make that much of a difference. Well, outside of the gap that we see already. So yeah, rally tyres for an overall vehicle, an absolute must, and probably your second best bet in terms of tarmac events. That, though, is going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, a goodbye.